For a lot of people, KH3 was very disappointing. I personally enjoyed it a lot, even though I could see the shortcomings all throughout the game. The additions to Remind make me fairly positive that they've understood what did and didn't work about at least the combat of KH3. Because of that, I am fairly confident that KH4 will be a better game than KH3 if they do the right things with it. I don't feel the doom and gloom a lot of KH fans have felt over the last few years, and I definitely want KH4 to be a good game. I have thought a lot about KH4 the last few weeks and wanted to make a full video talking about it. I'll talk about gameplay first, as that is where I'm most excited and nervous about. The first thing I want to see in KH4 is overall better combat than 3, hopefully meaning there's no situation commands, and there isn't too much going on in mob fights without consistent ways to handle them. In KH3, there were so many enemies on the field at once that you needed to use situation commands, which were mostly random unless you played on critical mode and disabled attractions. You would almost always be smacked around by enemies you couldn't even see. While I'm aware the game is clearly unfinished, the screenshots we got of gameplay only had a few mobs on screen, so maybe they're figuring it out a bit. I also want more humanoid bosses than we got in 3. A lot of the bosses in KH3 weren't very good. Most of the ones that were actually fun were the humanoid fights. It's not just KH3 that has had bad bosses. KH1 and 2 have lots of bad bosses, and a lot of them are non-humanoids that either move around a lot or force you to constantly change your approach, and not in a good way like a humanoid might. Just to be clear, I don't want them to only add humanoid bosses, I just want more of them, because I don't really trust Square to do non-human bosses as well as they do humanoids, as we've had 20 years of mainly bad non-humanoid bosses. Another thing I would like to see is more post-game content than we got in the base game of KH2 and KH3. It took a re-release for KH2 and a DLC add-on for KH3 to have adequate post-game content. Hopefully they do better. On the same topic, since it's fairly likely that Cloud and Sephiroth are in Quadratum, I really want to see Cloud teaming up with Sora and a post-game fight with Sephiroth. Even if Cloud doesn't have a place in the main story, it would be a perfect chance for a side quest. Cloud and Sephiroth's story in KH2 was a side quest, so they could do the same here. If cooking comes back, I don't want them to change very much, since Sora will likely be living on his own in his apartment. It would make sense for the player to be able to cook in there. They shouldn't make him able to make a lot of advanced dishes in general, because as far as we know, Sora hadn't learned to cook in general before KH3 and had learned from Remy. One last gameplay aspect that is really important to me is having a critical mode at launch. The combat of Kingdom Hearts to me is best on critical mode, and I also really enjoy level 1 critical. Except in BBS, it's so unbalanced. I'm a much newer fan of Kingdom Hearts. I didn't get to play it as a kid and didn't get into the games until late 2019. I played the original KH1, enjoyed it, but felt that KH2 would be too easy, so I played KH2 FM on critical mode and it was just right for me. I followed the tradition and played KH3 on crit mode as well. But because of KH3 being a rush game, it launched without crit, and players had to wait for a patch. I don't want this to happen with KH4. There is one thing that is both gameplay and story. We already know we're getting Mickey playable segments, but I'm sure I'm not alone in wanting to see a playable Riku, which is likely anyway, seeing as he's in Quadratum. It just makes sense to have a bit of gameplay with Riku, since they are already going through the trouble to create Quadratum. It would be more gameplay with less cost and effort on their part. I would be keen to see a small amount of playable Kairi. She got a brief boss fight in Remind, and while it was fun, I felt it was a bit too short. A lot of people wanted to see a game where you play as Kairi before KH4, but I personally would prefer it happen after KH4. I don't really see why people have the idea that Kairi training with Aqua would make sense. They somehow made 358 days over 2 work, but I believe part of that is because it was a handheld game and it wasn't really intended to be played in long sittings. A Kairi game with a 358 days structure could work, but handheld games are kinda dead, and Square is already moving more towards multi-platform games. The main reason why I don't want to see Kairi game before KH4 though, is because KH4 is a great chance to have a small segment where you play as her. Not really much has to happen, but the small catch up on what she's up to is all that's really needed. Kairi's major time to shine and get a game will likely come one day, but I don't think it's KH4. I just overall think it's better for a game about Kairi in general to happen after KH4. A lot of people have Disney worlds they really want to see for KH4, and in my case I don't really mind what worlds they choose. The only one I'd really like to see is Wreck-It Ralph. It's my favourite Disney movie that hasn't already been done before. Even though it was in Union Cross, we haven't really seen it in the 3D universe. As for story, there is a specific thing that's been on my mind. Since it's pretty clear the main three are going through depression for their own reason, it would make for a good chance to tackle the concept. They have before to an extent, but it hasn't been very explicit. I thought about making an entire video on this topic alone, but I'm still not sure if I should. I haven't yet talked about the cancellation of Missing Link, and for the most part I agree with a lot of people who want the ML story to be integrated into KH4, but to be honest, there's not really much they can do about it. Recent events indicate that KH4 is in the late stages of development, and as such we can't expect too much. I imagine there is a lot of tie-ins to Missing Link that were already going to be in the game, so imagine the easiest thing to do is to tweak whatever they already have, so the Missing Link related stuff isn't vague and confusing for players. I know I'm not providing good suggestions here, but I don't know what to suggest, because Missing Link is cancelled, so nobody really knows what the best way to do it would be, apart from Square. The next thing is definitely an unpopular opinion, but I really don't like Utada's modern music. That doesn't mean I don't want to hear an Utada song in the game at all. Even though I liked Don't Think Twice, Face My Fears is 100% the worst Utada KH song. I can understand Japanese, so I've heard a lot of her songs. I know she can do better. I like Utada's singing voice, but I don't like a lot of her songs. The lyrics in them are really cool though, but my ears just weren't made for this stuff. I have a very biased music taste. I don't hate Utada, and I actually really like her older songs. I like the songs Automatic and Distance a lot, but the modern stuff is just bland and uninteresting. On the topic of music, since Missing Link already got cancelled, a lot of people are going to miss out on Shimomura Yoko's music already created for it. She's talked about it already. It seems like a shame to waste all those songs she's created, and hopefully some of them at least will find a place in Kingdom Hearts 4. We know these songs will be good, along with the songs made for KH4, because Shimomura Yoko is the GOAT. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with me? Do you think I'm a total idiot? Is there something else I hadn't thought of? Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like. If you didn't like it, leave a like anyway.